Eric Mangini, the former New York Jets coach. Eric Mangini, how are you, buddy? Fox NFL analyst.
I'm doing great. I see you got your list rolling along today.
Yeah. You gotta hammer out a list there, Eric. Let me ask you, you've played with some great receivers. Off the top of your head, is there a great receiver that you played with that jumped out at you, maybe unheralded or on the list?
Well, look, on the list, all those guys are incredible. I remember playing Terrell Owens in the Super Bowl, and he wasn't supposed to play, and it was shocking that he was able to find a way to play, and it had to be through incredible pain. We doubled him during the game, and we still couldn't shut him down. And that performance alone was such a standout performance. We played Jerry Rice a little bit later in his career, and he was still incredibly effective. And you got to admire his work ethic and the level of preparation that he put into his craft, and the way that he'd go to work every day and feel like today was going to be the day he got cut. As great as he was, that's the mindset that he went into. Calvin Johnson was just ridiculous to deal with. You double team him, you have different types of double teams on him, and he could still find a way to get open. And I think the problem with any list is there's the rule changes that I think have helped a lot of receivers in recent years. They're not dealing with the same type of jams at the line of scrimmage that the receivers from previous generations have dealt with. They don't deal with the same type of hits from the safeties. There's a lot more protection. So you got to take into account a little bit of that. I mean, Chris Carter is a guy who had double-digit touchdowns for, 6 seasons. He helped train Randy Moss, Marvin Harrison. There's so many great receivers that whenever you make a list like that, it's you're going to leave out some guys that you could argue for strongly in any one of those spots.
Certainly. Before we get to the Jets on Hard Knocks, I opened the show talking about Kyler Murray. He gave some quotes saying that he's going to be coachable, but at some point we all have to look in the mirror. We all have to be locked in. Eric, given what he makes and that he's the quarterback of pretty much a sinking ship, I just didn't love the accountability where he's kind of deflecting some of it. This is a guy who had a homework clause put in his contract because he famously was not looking at the playbook during the week. He just wasn't locked in. I don't want to say Arizona has a problem, but I just wonder, you've coached a lot of quarterbacks. I don't know. Did you like what Murray said? Did you not have an issue with it?
No, I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. He talked about going into last season and there being a lot of negativity and a lot of problems. The guy signed a contract for what, $230 million? So if that's your definition of negativity, God, I would love to go into a season that negative with a $230 million contract. And I think what he's talking about is exactly what came out, which was the clause that they felt compelled to put in about his level of preparation. They not only had to put the clause in, but then they had to put addendums into the clause, like you had to watch tape, but you had to be paying attention to the tape. That to me is incredibly problematic. And when you deflect blame as opposed to step up and take accountability, when you're the face of the franchise, when you're being compensated the way that he's being compensated, it's problematic. It is a really difficult thing for the rest of the group to look at and say, we want to rally around him.
Would you have any advice for Gannett on how to deal with an egomaniac of a quarterback?
Well, I think didn't they just go to his Hall of Fame induction, his college Hall of Fame induction? So they're things like that where they're trying to build a relationship. And look, players change over time. The way you relate to players changes over time. And I get that. And it seems like they're doing everything they can to make sure that they have as positive a relationship as can be. That being said, you also have to have accountability, and you've got to have the ability of not just a friendship and a relationship, but the ability to coach a player hard and to demand certain things from them that they may not even know that they need to do. And it's a fine line of having a friendship and then also having a coaching relationship where you can make and have the hard discussions with guys that they need.
Yeah. It just seems very bleak there in Arizona. I want to quickly pivot to comments Josh Jacobs made about how he's not reporting to training camp until he gets a new deal. That comes on the heels of Saquon Barkley having some issues with the Giants. And listen, I get it. You don't want to pay a running back. But if you remove both these guys from these teams, we're talking about like 4, 5, 6 win teams. They're that integral. What can we do for running backs at this point? Like, they just seem endangered species. Maybe it is cyclical, Eric, but it just does. I don't have a good feeling about what's the future holds for Jacobs or Barkley.
Yeah, well, $13 million isn't a horrible number. It's not like you're necessarily feeling sad for someone who's being paid $13 million a year. So I don't know if we have to do anything for running backs. And unfortunately, the league is an open marketplace, and you're going to pay what the market dictates that you have to pay. And their only leverage that these guys have is their services. So if he's really willing to take a stand and to sit out, then that's the leverage that he has. And that can be difficult. We've seen it with Le'Veon Bell, where he sat out and it didn't really work out very well for him. So the precedent isn't positive for guys who sit out, and it's difficult, but that's the only leverage he has right now.
All right, we can wrap up with my New York Jets, your New York Jets going on Hard Knocks. I wish I could repeat what you said when I asked, hey, were you ever on Hard Knocks in your time during the commercial break? But
I said no, thank God. Yeah.
Well, why do you say it like that?
It's fun to watch, and they had the right Jets head coach with Rex on it, and I think that this will be a great TV with Aaron Rodgers, with all the expectations, with it being in New York. There's a ton of great storylines there, but it is also difficult to operate as business as usual, and there's a lot of private conversations, and there's a lot of coaching that you want to do with guys, and things that you want to discuss with guys that you don't necessarily want broadcast to the entire country. And it can make people be more reserved. It can make some people show out a little bit more than they would naturally, or do things that they wouldn't naturally do. So it's a difficult thing, I would imagine, to have cameras in your face every single day, all day, in an environment where you're trying to get a ton of work done and get ready for the start of the season.
Would you say Saleh is, I don't know, coaching for his job, a hot seat, whatever you want to say, but, they got Rodgers. If they don't make the playoffs, it's probably safe to say that him and the GM are going to get dusted, right?
It's going to be hard. I had 2 winning seasons in New York, and when we got Brett Favre, and we had a lapse down the home stretch when he got hurt, and I was let go. Robert hasn't had the winning season yet, so there are a ton of expectations. There's $100 million that have gone into this decision to go get Aaron Rodgers. This is a team that was in a lot of close games. They've got a lot of young talent, and I would imagine that ownership is thinking, okay, what's the missing piece? The missing piece is a Hall of Fame quarterback, and they've got one of those, and he's only a year removed from back-to-back MVPs, so high expectations is not unreasonable, and it's a hot seat, but it's not a hot seat because you have a bad team. It's a hot seat because you've got a great opportunity to be incredibly successful this season.
Yeah, if you could real quick go back to your mindset when you guys you had 2 winning seasons, then Woody brings on Favre. I don't remember if you had signed off on it or you were keen on it or not, but just remind me what that was like going into like training camp in July. Did you feel added pressure? Like, what was that? What was the vibe there?
Yeah, well, we had the 1 winning season initially, and then we dropped off. And so the last season, when I was let go, we were 9-7. But going into the Favre decision, it wasn't something that I was behind, because I felt like we were building something, and there were steps that were going into each part of that building process, and we were making a ton of progress. So to insert someone like Brett Favre, which is a giant personality, very different offensive scheme than we had been running, a lot of things were being disrupted. So I wasn't initially for it. I eventually got behind it and went all in. But it's a different scenario. We got him late. We got him during training camp. We got him during actually the preseason games. We were in Cleveland playing a preseason game. They got him in the off season. They have an offensive coordinator that he worked with, or he has worked with. We had a totally different offense and had to adjust to him. So they're actually better positioned, I believe, than we were when we got Brett, because of the amount of time they've had with him and the familiarity that the group of coaches has with him.
All right, Fox Sports NFL analyst Eric Mangini. I'd love to read a profile of what that was like, Eric. I mean, you've talked about it to me behind the scenes. I think the audience would love to know. Thanks for taking the time, Eric. Enjoy the weekend.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.